Have we got time in the year for one more product review? I think so. Hello and welcome back to Jenna Gets Creative. I think I like this split screen thing, so we're going to do the split screen until I'm done with the live on camera part and then we'll switch over. Anyway, today we are reviewing the Tombow TwinTone markers. This is the last item I have left to review from the holiday bundle that I got this year. Just to be clear, I spent my own money on the holiday bundle. Tombow did not send anything to me. Tombow is not paying me. And update for those who are wondering, I have not been selected for next year's creator team. That's okay. Maybe a silver lining, actually, because there was something in the fine print about exclusively using their products all year, and I don't know if that means in projects for them or period, and I could definitely do it to use only Tombow all year, but it would be rather limiting, and I would need a lot more Tombow than what I have right now. But there's always next year, right? So expect a Creator Crew edition next fall. If you're interested in the other items that I got from the holiday bundle, I will link my previous two videos. In the first video, I unboxed the whole bundle that I got. I went over what the travel storage bag thing was like, and I reviewed the Marion Brights collection of the Tombow dual brush art pens. In the second video, I did a full second chance review on Tombow ABT Pro alcohol markers because my bundle did come with a bonus blending set of 5 browns and grays. And now today we are reviewing the TwinTone. There were more items in that set, but they were items that I already have, like the black Fudenosuke pens. Over here on the split side of the screen, you're going to see me swatching these, doing a little bit of testing with them, talking about them, just opinions live, and then over on this other side of the screen, the bigger part, you will see me starting my full piece to demonstrate and get a better feel for these products. As soon as I'm done over here on this split screen, we will switch to full screen and the audio will switch to voiceover recorded after the fact, and I will give my final impressions on these pens. Let's start off by having a play on this just random mixed media drawing paper. So the TwinTones, they are called TwinTones because they are dual-ended pens. On one end, we have these semi-rigid tapered plastic nibs. They are a little bit flexible. And on the other end, we have a tapered felt bullet nib, marker fine point. You can get a little bit of variation out of that tapered plastic nib, not a whole lot. I do think that these serve a different purpose than the Fudenosukes because if you want to get a very carefully controlled fine line, you just use the tip of this. It's not going to wobble anywhere. It's going to give a very consistent line. And then on the other end, we have this marker nib. You can also get some variation out of it. And of course, this ink is water soluble. That's not coming away quite as eagerly as the dual brush pens do, but it is a very nice ink. Let's see what happens if we put it on something else and then pick it back up. Excuse any wiggling this side screen does. The power cord for this camera is draped over my water. Oh yeah, that's nice. Again, not quite as pigmented as the dual brush pens, but this isn't what these are meant to do, primarily. It's kind of a bonus fact here. Just trying to add more water and get a gradient. So of course the fact that they are water soluble means these are not fine liner pens that you're going to put down first in your artwork and then go over it with other materials. They're probably going to bleed. We will test that. We'll test to see what we can put over them. Probably a last item to use if you're lining with these. The yellow is hard to see on white paper, but that shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. It's yellow. Very nice yellow. It's nice warm canary kind of color. The green in this set is nice light leafy green. This is just the 6-pack rainbow set. I believe there are more colors. Let's try going back over it, see what happens. Yeah, so water-based pen with a felt nib. It does rip up the page a little bit when you go back over it. That was going back over it while it's still wet. Let's let a spot dry and see what happens if you go back over it when it's dry. Very pinky purple there, very nice warm grape tone. Is that dry now? That's dry enough. Let's see what happens. Same story. Okay. I did do this test when I unboxed everything, and it was not quite as bad on the Canson mixed media paper. So this is going to be partly the quality of the paper. This is very, very thin paper. It doesn't have a heck of a lot of tooth, so it is more susceptible to the water damage of going back over it. This is not bad though. I have seen a lot of other artist quality markers do that sort of thing. In fact, let's pull some down and compare. We have a Marabou. We have a Caran d'Ache Fibralo. And we have the Tombow TwinTone. I think the winner in this case, actually, for the least damage to the paper is the Caran d'Ache, which is not surprising. That is a very expensive item. After that, though, it goes to the TwinTone. That Marabou just absolutely destroyed that part of the paper. It is catching like crazy. That just barely felt like it was catching. That doesn't feel like it's catching at all. There's a little bit of paper residue on the nib, but it did not feel bad going back over it. Let's compare these watering down, and let's also compare them to some other water-soluble pens. We have our TwinTone marker versus Caran d'Ache Fibralo, Marabou Pen Graphics, Tombow Dual Brush Art Pen, Caran Brush Marker Pro, Manuscript Cali Creative Flexi, Winsor Newton Watercolor Pro Marker, and Faber-Castell Albrecht Dürer Watercolor Marker. The first test is putting it down on the paper first and dissolving it. The second test is picking it up off of the plate. Caran d'Ache Fibralo, Marabou Aqua Graphics, Dual Brush Art Pen, Caran Brush Marker Pro, Manuscript, Winsor & Newton, and Faber-Castell. Okay, they're fairly dry now. So what I want to highlight here is that these ones are watercolor markers, professional grade watercolor markers, in that these are meant to be watercolor pigment in a water-based marker form. They're not just water-based ink that happen to be water soluble. This one, arguably also that. The rest of them happen to be water soluble. Ones like this are aiming more to be perceived that way. Ones like this were not trying to be perceived that way, and it seems to be a happy accident. First, let's look at the left-hand side, where we put the marker down on the page first and then activated it. On this side, I would say the best one is definitely Tombow's dual brush pen, and that is only a little bit surprising. I'm a little bit surprised that the Caran didn't perform that well. Really, everything on this page did about the same except for that dual brush. It really did a beautiful little gradient coming off of the page like that. And then over on this side, I like the result with the manuscript pen a lot better than the proper watercolor markers, which again is interesting. I would say the best results overall are the Tombow dual brush and the manuscript, the Cali Creative. Out of what the TwinTone is doing, it is directly comparable to the Fibralo, to the Caran. At first glance, it looks similar to what the proper watercolors are doing, but the residual marking in the watercolors is not a solid color like this. This left a fairly solid mark. This really did try its best to dissolve, and it got a little cloudy and, you know, broccoli pattern as they call it, because it's watercolor, not watercolor. In comparison, yes, I would say it did just as well as the Fibralo and the Caran. Marabou's doing something interesting there. Like, it comes when this is wet, when it's coming off, it looks like it's doing absolutely nothing, and then as it dries, what came off is just as pigmented as what I picked up off of the plate. The right-hand side swatches, that's where I scribbled them down on this poor ceramic plate and picked them back up directly off of that. That's just where we get a very true test of what these inks look like dissolved in water without actually having the paper try to absorb some of it first. Now, we're not judging color. These are not all the same color. What I want to see is there a difference in color between this side and the first side? I want to see what the edges look like, and I want to see if the pigments appear to be separating or not. So notice how every single one of these has a bit of that lighter fade out happening somewhere, except for the Marabou. The Marabou has almost bolder edges all around. This one is supposed to be a watercolor marker, the Karen Brush Marker Pro, that is liquid watercolor in a clear barrel, so you can see what you're getting. The dual brush is supposed to be doing the same thing, and it looks very, very similar going down. This twin tone is behaving in the same way, but I would say it looks like the ink separates a little bit. You can kind of see some pink coming out of this. The Fibrello looks exactly the same color coming off of it. The Marabou looks darker on this side, which means you're not getting a full activation when you put down the paper first. Over here on the manuscript and proper watercolor markers side, the manuscript pen looks a little bit darker, which means we didn't get the full payoff here, even though it dissolved beautifully. And I would actually say the same for the proper watercolor markers, particularly the Faber-Castell. It's much darker on this side. We are getting a whole lot more of that faded out watercolor effect because, again, these are professional grade watercolor supplies. This is not. This is a calligraphy pen that just happens to be super water soluble on the page. So final thought on this test, the twin tone performs just as well as a Karen or a Fibrello. Puts it about in the middle for a water soluble marker. It's not Marabou, it's not struggling, but it's not doing what dual brush and the professional watercolor markers and for some reason manuscript is able to do. Now I want to see what happens if I draw some outlines and try to dissolve into the middle of the shape. What happens if I do that? What happens if I put more ink down to do that? So no matter what, you're going to get a much paler color on the inside, but naturally, as you would assume, the more pigment you put down on the outside, the bolder the color on the inside is going to be. That could be quite a cool effect. Let's just test out water solubility with the much finer lines. So there are cases where you might want to get that effect, but I do think that that end is more meant for writing and lining, and this end is more meant for either lettering or artwork. Okay, let's see what this can go over and under and all that kind of stuff. Okay, so on this side I have made some lines with the twin tone, and on this side I have made some lines with other things. We have a Copic alcohol-based marker, we have the manuscript pen, we have a dual brush art pen, and we have a pigment liner. Putting the twin tone down first, giving it a sec to dry, can we go over it with alcohol ink? Lightly, yes we can. Can we scrub over it? Yes we can. Water-based, not supposed to be a watercolor marker. Going over it very lightly is okay. Scrubbing over it, it does seem to dissolve the ink underneath it. Dual brush pen, same thing. Going over it once lightly, not a problem. Scrubbing over it, you are going to pick up and dissolve that twin tone ink. And with a pigment liner, no surprise, this is just completely opaque on top of the line. I do not see it disturbing the line at all and moving that blue color around. Now let's see what happens if we go over these things with the twin tone. Not surprising, absolutely nothing happens if you go over an alcohol-based stain with water-based marker ink. Over the manuscript, the light strokes are fine. Going over it with more of a scrubbing, we do start to destroy the paper because we are putting wet back on top of wet, water-based on top of water-based. I don't see this disturbing the manuscript as much. You could still very distinctly see that manuscript line underneath. The dual brush art pen. Similar result to manuscript, except we did not eat up the paper over top of the dual brush art pen. Good to know. And of course, pigment liner. I expect this is not going to budge at all. And it doesn't. So what to avoid in terms of layering other things with the dual brush pen? Don't line your work first with the dual brush pen. Put it down first in art, whatever. If you're going to do some serious layering, scrubbing, filling the area with another water-based pen, but you are fine to put it underneath alcohol or pigment liners. You can safely put this on top of all the other things. If you're going to really scrub and fill an area on top of a water-based pen that is not a high art grade watercolor pen, then do be careful. You're going to start destroying the page a bit. I think I've put this through all the tests I can put it through, so we're going to go go full screen now with the post artwork voiceover. Alright, so voiceover Jenna here to give my final thoughts on the piece. You're still watching me complete it, but this person speaking to you has already finished. These pens, let me remind you, are primarily meant for calligraphy, for bullet journaling, as fine liners. They're supposed to be writing implements, not necessarily art implements, but this is an art channel. This is how I choose to use them, and I'm sure I am not alone in that. I am primarily trying to use them as watercolor here, and really, if you're getting Tombow products and you're trying to use them as watercolor, what you're supposed to use is the dual brush art pens. Check out the unboxing video where I did review those in full. I think they did fairly well for what they are. For the piece, I chose to do Arbok because I love doing Pokemon, but if I just do a dedicated Pokemon video with no other purpose, it does not do well in the algorithm. And I chose Dark Arbok specifically because his pattern is just so much more interesting. I started out with a background. I wanted just a wispy, foggy, sludge, poison background because this is a poison type Pokemon. I started with the pure green, and then I mixed in some other colors. I mixed in blue, I mixed in purple, I mixed in yellow. I did the same with the purple, and I got a very nice poison, fog, sludge background going. And then I used that purple as my base to start on Arbok. I mixed in different types of purples. I put yellow into the rim lighting on the edges. I combined both the watercolor technique and putting the pen directly on the paper to finish the red and yellow markings on this guy. And then at the end, you'll see me coming in and using the blue and the purple in particular just to darken shadows, add some more detail, and add some more interest to the line work before I came in with my Fudenosuke pen and my mono drawing pen to darken up the final line work. The only non-Tombow item you see me using at the very end is a Sakura Jelly Roll white gel pen. That's just because I don't have a white pen from Tombow. I did want to keep this Tombow products because it is a Tombow product review, and theoretically, if you're doing this kind of work with Tombow products, you're going to want to know how they work with other Tombow products. I am using cold press watercolor paper. This is 300 GSM. It's rag cotton. It is higher in the quality there. So whatever the ink is doing on the page, this is what it's going to do on watercolor paper. Nothing here is the fault of lower quality paper. It was eager to bleed quite a bit into other areas when there was too much water introduced, particularly when I did details on top of details with the watercolor wet technique, rather than putting the actual pen on the page. On one hand, I think it added to the sludgy, misty, foggy effect of the piece, but on the other hand, there were some areas I really wanted to keep clean. For example, the face on Arbok's throat, fin, hood, whatever you want to call it. I did want to keep the edges of that yellow quite clean, but when I went to speed dry it, it had other ideas and it bled outward. You might not have seen it bleed outward in the footage because I put it down, I hit pause, I used my dryer, I hit record again, and probably in that dryer part is when it spread out. It was going to do that anyway, I just sped it up, maybe influenced the shape of it. I was really impressed in parts where I put the pen directly on the paper around any heavy black line work. Any part where I overlapped onto the black, it really didn't change the color at all. You can't tell where I overlapped and where I was very precise in my movements. If you want these pens as writing implements, they are a dream to work with. They are so smooth on the page. They really don't tear the page up all that much, and I think these will serve you very well. If you want them to line your artwork as a final stage, also very good. I think these are going to do exactly what you want them to. If you are wanting to use these as art markers, as watercolor markers, you can do it. I think I've proven that you can do it, but you are going to get a bleeding, inky style to it. If you want more of a proper watercolor feel and you are buying Tombow markers, you're going to want to spring for the dual brush art pens, not the twin tones. At this point, I would like to remind my audience that I am going to be taking 2 weeks off. I will be missing 4 regular upload slots over the Christmas and New Year's holiday area. We are traveling to BC to see my family for the first time in 2 years. I am so excited. So this week we will finish off. We have an Art Addicts Alliance video on Friday. The prompt choices, the themes for the month. We can recreate a famous artwork, or we can do something involving deep sea. Comment down below if you've got nothing else to say about this video. Comment down below with your guess on what I'm going to do on Friday. Members of the Art Addicts Alliance, you're not allowed to guess because I have already discussed it in the Discord. Going into next week, either Tuesday or Wednesday, whichever slot I get something finished for, I will have a video then. Friday is Christmas Eve, and I will already be in BC, so that will be the first of 4 videos I miss. The last week of December, there will be no uploads. The first Tuesday/Wednesday of January will also be missed, but then finally Friday of that first whole week of January, I believe it's the 7th, I did leave a note about this on my community tab. That will be my first video. That is the 5th video slot from now. That is when I'll be back. In summary, I have 2 more videos left for 2021, and then I will be back the first Friday of January. If you're looking for more to watch, I've got some suggestions up on the left side of the screen now. Don't forget to like, comment, maybe even subscribe, and if you like living life creatively, whatever that means to you, I'd love to have you along for the ride. Bye guys!